So, a bit of experimental content for the channel. One of the things I've noticed having a look at the viewer stats and analytics is that despite the hours and hours of rally footage I've put on the channel, it's my unboxing video of my pedals and the Assassin's Creed reaction that seem to have gotten the most interest. So this video will be a combination of those two areas. I will put timestamps at the in the description for so people can skip to the bit that's of the most interest to them. I'm far too lazy to do separate videos on each topic. So the first part of this video, I will talk a little bit more about the Thrustmaster T-LCM pedals, and in the back half of the video I'll talk a little bit about games that I've played recently, mostly Ghost of Tsushima and a board game I've played called Sanctum, and a very brief follow-up comment to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the latest bits of information that have come out. So check the description for the timestamps if you don't want to hear about certain bits. And yeah, let's see how this experiment goes. So first, I want to talk about the Thrustmaster T-LCM pedals. Now, I'm coming at this from a very amateur perspective. You will see lots of reviews on the web from pretty hardcore sim racers, you know, your Sim Racing Garage and all that, which will do big teardown videos and all that sort of stuff. And frankly, I don't have that basis for comparison. I don't have the kind of leisure time that lets me play that much racing sims that I can really sink my teeth into, you know, the itty-bitty points of comparisons between all the pedals. So my perspective will be more as someone who is on a, you know, not a fixed budget, but there comes a point where I do feel like it's difficult to justify spending too much money on a set of pedals or any of my sim race gear. My rig's modest. You know, it's expensive by average punter standards, but in the sim racing world, it's one step above gutter trash if you look how these people talk. So I'm not telling you how these compare to Hoistingfeld. I'm not telling you how they compare to, you know, the custom built pedals and all that sort of stuff. I'm just talking about them in terms of their overall comparison for what you get for 400 Australian dollars compared to what comes in the box with Logitech wheels or the Thrustmaster T 300. So from that basis, I have to say that they're an absolutely astonishing set of pedals. The difference that you'll experience switching from potentiometer-based pedals to load cell-based pedals, even just for the brake, you know, the first thing you'll see amongst the more hardcore sim racers is this, oh, don't put any money into the feedback wheel or anything like that, go straight to the pedals. I can't really argue with them. Having experienced it finally for myself, the transition going from you know, just fairly ordinary pedals to something with a load cell, it's quite remarkable. It's like going from digital to analog almost. And so just to accompany this talk about pedals, I'll add some just experimental footage of me mucking about with Richard Burns' Rally and I think R Factor 2 and whatever else I can find, just to fill the time. It's nothing especially good, just think of them as offcuts. But, you know, playing a variety of race sims, whether I'm playing Dirt Rally 2, which is my mainstay, or a bit of Assetto Corsa Competizione, R Factor 2, Standard Assetto Corsa, they're fantastic, you know. The ordinary pedals you get with the Logitech G-Series wheels are really good. The T3PA pedals that come with the T300, they're quite nice too, especially once you adjust the pedals to give you a bit more foot clearance so that you can heel and toe proper. But yeah, just the difference going to something with as much heft and as much precision as the TLCMs is fantastic. And for the money, honestly, I couldn't be any happier. Only things that would be pain points on those pedals. The first thing is was quite easily able to use the G25 and the T300 pedals just on the floor. They both sit on the carpet fine. Maybe stick a cardboard box behind them to stop them from moving around. But the T-LCMs, because you do have to put a fair bit more pressure. I mean, you can put light springs on if you want to. But if you're going to spend that kind of money on a set of pedals, you may as well really put some heavy springs on. So I've got about 80 kilos of compression force on there. And with that much, if you're hitting high on the pedal face, you are going to rock that pedal back because the plate just doesn't have the weight to keep them steady. So I did need to buy just the Thrustmaster wheel frame for it. So another $100. If I was more DIY inclined, I would have just gone down to Bunnings and bought a piece of timber and drilled some mounting holes, whatever. They do include the blueprint with measurements and all that if you do want to just make something of your own. But for me, I would have had to have gone and bought a proper power drill and suddenly not become a five-thumbed person, and it was easy to spend $100 and use the frame. So your mileage may vary, but either way, using the pedals just on the floor, if that's how you've been doing it in the past, it's not going to work for the T-LCMs. So that's pain point number one. It's honestly pretty minor. I wouldn't let it be an obstacle. It's well worth doing, and honestly, if you're on any kind of sim racing upgrade path, you're going to spend the money anyway. And it's not something that's wasted. It's not wasted money. The frame's going to be useful for other situations, or you can always sell it down the line to someone else who's improving their rig, and they'll be grateful to get it for a little bit less than what you paid for it. So yeah, it's not a big deal. Other pain point is the pedals do have a fairly short throw on them, so you're not looking at more than about 2.5 inches, which honestly, when you're actually using them, doesn't feel like a big deal. But really, if you're used to potentiometer pedals, they can collapse all the way down, or almost, to maybe you're looking at 45 degrees. The pedal travel on the T-LCMs is shorter, especially on the brake pedal. You don't have a huge amount of distance, but because you can put so much force in that compression spring, and because you're using force to depress the pedal, it's not an impediment. You don't notice it. And in fact, when you're heel towing, it actually feels right, especially if you've got your pedal faces well adjusted and you've got the angle on the pedal plate right. So again, you may see that raised as a bit of a niggle, but it truly is a niggle. There's more than enough. Like driving rear-wheel drive cars in Dirt Rally 2, controlling the throttle is far better than anything else I've used, which has the potentiometer-based accelerator. So it's the best one of those. And in the Thrustmaster stuff, they use the heart sensor, which is the Hall effect stuff. So it's nice and precise. Clutch pedal, honestly, because I play rally, I have that set to about 60% saturation anyway, so it may as well be an on-off switch. Who cares? But if I do want to switch it back, say I want to use my pedals to play flight sim, I always could go back into the firmware and set the saturation to 100, and it's got the same amount of throw as the accelerator pedal. But in terms of how it impacts your driving, it really is an astonishingly good set of pedals for the money. Build quality I can't fault. I know, again, people get a little bit nervous about the Sim Racing Garage review where he talks about the plastic construction inside the pedals, but it's a high-grade, high-density plastic, and there's nothing that you're going to be doing on the pedals that's going to cause a lot of side movement. So unless you are kicking the hell out of your pedals from the side, I honestly don't see it being a huge big deal long term. But if you're buying a set of pedals to be buried with, that might be a consideration. But using cheap pedals, I've never broken a set physically. You have bits that go wrong in them, but there's nothing in the T-LCMs that's lower grade than in pedals that I've kicked around for a decade and not broken. So Again, I wouldn't stress too much about that. These are the sort of niggles you get when people literally pull everything apart and run under a fine-tooth comb. And, if you really are that worried about it, spend $1,000 and buy the Huizenfeld pedals. They're going to outlast you, okay? But, if you treat something that's costing $400 as maybe potentially you might have to replace it down the line, honestly, they're so well built, it's not a big deal. And realistically, most of us sim racers are on some sort of upgrade trajectory anyway. One of the sets of pedals I considered instead of the TLCMs before I got them was the Fanatec Club Sports, but then your starting price is $600, and then you're looking at things like mods for damping and all that sort of stuff, and you very quickly double the sorts of money you'll spend on the TLCMs. And not to say you wouldn't notice a difference. I haven't tried them, but by all accounts they're very, very good. But I have no regrets at all, and honestly, I'm happy to have the money in my back pocket so that I can go and get the the Sparco wheel or the sequential handbrake at some point. But again, your mileage may vary. Other plus sides being a Thrustmaster product if you're already in that ecosystem. So I've got the T300 and the shifter. I can take all that stuff, hook it all together, and I can still use it on the PlayStation 4. And with any luck, because PS5 is backwards compatible, I'll be able to use it on PlayStation 5. So I can play Gran Turismo 7 with it. We'll wait and see. Sony hasn't been great about ensuring cross-compatibility between the steering wheels over the years. So, you're able to take PS2 to PS3, but not PS3 to PS4. We'll see what happens this time around. Hopefully they've improved on that front. But even right now, I could hypothetically use my Thrustmaster setup with the PS4. So that's an upshot, but wasn't a big consideration. I mainly race on the PC, so mixing and matching brands isn't a big deal for me. So down the line, if I do get a Fanatec base, or I skip a step and go straight to some sort of direct drive setup, well, if I'm spending direct drive money, I'm going to replace the whole lot. If I've got options, and honestly, the TLCM's great set of pedals. So, not by any means an exhaustive review, but having lived with them now for quite some time, I can say nothing but a big thumbs up. They're phenomenal pedals. So, if you're on the fence, if you're not sure, by all means, it's $400 well spent, and they will have resale value because they're still comparatively rare. If you get them, you don't like them, someone will buy them off you because they are good. They're not pro level gear, but they're a great in between step. And I honestly don't see how you would noticeably see a huge difference unless you really got up to the higher quality stuff, which you load sell across the board. I certainly through the early evaluations, comparing the TLCMs versus something like the Club Sport pedals, those are really designed to be mounted, and so again, additional expense, additional awkwardness. Not so easy to migrate from one system to the other. But these are just considerations that I thought about when I was shopping. Your particular situation may vary. If you already have a Fanatec wheelbase, then stay in the ecosystem, and then you'll have cross-platform compatibility. But yeah, if you're looking to upgrade from the Logitech series, the G series, and you don't want to spend a huge amount of money, or you're still enjoying your Logitech wheelbase, but you would like to dabble in better pedals, it's a nice, safe upgrade path. You can't go wrong. It is a genuine big step up in terms of quality. You are going from something that feels like a toy to something that actually comes a lot closer to reproducing what you experience in driving a real car. So, and you will notice the difference straight away. Like I said, it's like going from digital to analog, from standard definition to HD. You will be able to moderate braking much more easily. So, don't really want to repeat myself any further than that. I think I've sung its praises. if you if you have any questions about the pedals, you want to know more about it, if you want me to do any follow-up content, you can post in the comments, and we'll see how we go. I know most of the stray clicks I get to my channel are people researching those pedals, so I hope a more grounded evaluation of the pedals is helpful. Yeah, and I hope you've enjoyed whatever footage I've put up. It's probably me crashing a lot. Again, just looking for offcuts, not the mainstream rally stuff that I've been putting up. And I make no testament to its quality. It's certainly not my inability to drive in those offcuts should not be seen as a reflection on the pedals. Normally I upload good footage. The offcuts are offcuts for a reason. So, next up, I want to talk a little bit about Ghost of Tsushima. So, if you're not interested in a PlayStation game about samurai, you can click off now and off you go. No harm done. See you later. See you next video. So I'm going to switch to some video footage of just captured from early in the game. And it's not a review. I haven't finished the game yet, but I just want to talk a little bit about it, give my perspective as a history teacher, and a early recommendation or warning, depending on how I feel about it. But spoiler alert, really liking the game. So this is some early game footage, I think from Act 1 or 2. There's no spoilers here. It's not main mission footage or anything like that. Just Jin Sakai running around murdering people, which is the gist of the game, which, good. That's what we like. So, look, it is an Assassin's Creed game at heart. In terms of level design, in terms of overall quest design, you're looking at a historical action game with lots and lots and lots of free world stuff to do, with stealth mechanics and normal combat mechanics, with a light RPG system, all that sort of stuff. So, if you enjoy Assassin's Creed, straight away this will be very familiar territory for you. However, it isn't just designed to appeal to Assassin's Creed players. Probably the game I felt the most similarity to while playing is actually Horizon Zero Dawn. You're a badass adventurer. You're just as good with a bow as you are with melee weapons. I can't remember. Oh, yes, no. Horizon Zero Dawn had some light stealth. This has some light stealth. So, gameplay-wise, there's a lot of familiarity to it. There's no reinventing of the wheel here. But where Ghost of Tsushima justifies itself, there's a couple of things. First of all, it is absolutely stunning. It really is one of the most beautiful-looking games you'll see. And that's something you'll see consistently across all reviews everywhere. And it's funny, the beauty doesn't come across from especially being overloaded with technical wizardry. Where the beauty comes across is the care that's gone into constructing what you see. It's like Horizon Zero Dawn. The developers of that game said from the outset, they figured, why put something in front of you if it's not going to be beautiful? Why have a sunset if it's not going to be one of the most beautiful sunsets you see? Why have a countryside unless it's beautiful? So that same philosophy applies here with Ghost of Tsushima. If you look at any one element too closely, if you look at the textures on the building, if you look at the grass, you'll see things aren't that high poly. There's not that much detail, but the beauty's there where it matters, in the lighting, in the contrast, in the little touches like the way things move in the wind, the amount of particles and stuff flying around. And in particular, when you have a main story cutscene with characters talking to each other, the way the shots are composed has a real cinematic eye to it. And there's just a ton of care and craft that's gone into the visual presentation. And the visual presentation isn't just for the sake of being beautiful. A lot of it serves gameplay purposes. If you see fires, if you see birds flying around, there's usually, like on the footage there, you can see a little gold bird flying around. If I was to follow that somewhere, that would take me to something I haven't discovered yet. So there's lots of little things in the game that help cue you into stuff that's going on. Lots of really intelligent choices. So in terms of presentation, It's a beautiful looking game. It's a beautiful sounding game. Good music, good voice acting, all that sort of stuff. And I do have to give them a lot of props. I don't normally play games set in historical settings in English if I can help it. I try to play it in the correct language and just deal with the subtitles. But in this case, the developers went to the trouble of hiring Asian actors to do Asian characters, and so you don't have any, you don't have the Apu situation of people putting on fake Asian voice or things like that. The actors you see are the likenesses used for the characters, and they're of Japanese ancestry, so it all feels authentic, and the performance they put in is really, really good. And because they only did motion capture for the English performances, it's just less jarring. You've got good vocal performances, good physical performances, and it all dovetails nicely. Now, one thing I will probably do if I do a second playthrough is play it in the black and white high contrast Kurosawa mode. And for that, I will use the Japanese voiceover because why not? This is a fresh experience. But the actual gameplay itself, where it separates itself out a little bit. First of all, the story is compelling. In the Mongol invaders, you've got a compelling enemy. The main character, Jin Sakai, he has an interesting internal conflict between, his upbringing as a samurai and wanting to fight honorably versus the necessity of dealing with an overwhelming invading force and having to resort to asymmetric combat techniques to try and gain an advantage against an overwhelming enemy. So that plays out really, really well, and it takes the story in interesting places. I'm up to Act 3 now, and haven't finished the game, but I'm getting close, I think. And honestly, it's one of those games where you will spend a lot of time mucking about, because mucking about is really, really interesting. There's lots of fun stuff to do. And at the very core of it, the actual combat is really good too. I know the clip I've got here is mainly of stealth, but honestly, the non-stealthy combat, the samurai sword fighting, is just really good, and more often than not, while you have less stealthy options, you will just walk straight into enemy positions, challenge people to a fight, and it's really satisfying parry and counter and stance versus style sort of thing. So you might be fighting off a pack of 5 guys, and there might be 2 shield bearers, 1 spear fighter, 1 swordsman, and an archer, and you have to pick the right stance to match the situation. And you have to sort of be able to change gears on the fly and work the crowd and use the tools at your advantage. So the actual direct melee combat is really good, and it is more satisfying than the stealth combat, at least in the early game. Towards the end of the game, as you get more and more options, stealth does become more interesting. But you won't play the whole game the same way the whole way through, because there's just lots of interesting ways to approach it. It's got that fun combat puzzle design that you get with any of these historical open world games. So my 3/4 of the way through the game evaluation of Ghost of Tsushima right now is a hearty recommendation. I can't find much to fault with it. Obviously, there are niggles, but it is just a satisfying, engaging game to play. From a historical perspective, they have used a little bit of anachronism in terms of samurai culture versus the sort of ninja style stuff that you do. But honestly, it's all designed for a very authentic effect. You're not playing full-on samurai history. You're playing a Kurosawa film, and it captures that feel really, really well. It evokes that period of Japanese history really beautifully. And again, if you follow the game press, people have criticised that the haiku aren't particularly good. and there's question marks raised about, an American developer making a game set in medieval Japan. But it's very clear that they've had people on board who know their subject matter. It's clear that they have a deep respect for what they're doing. And you can see that in the response that's come from the Japanese games press and from developers like the director of the Yakuza series, who all commented that this game is the samurai game that many Japanese developers would have made or wish they'd made. And it's definitely a passion project. It's a labour of love. And if you find the samurai setting, medieval Japan history, interesting, that's got a lot to offer. If you find, open world combat, especially melee combat, interesting, there's a lot to offer there. And if you liked games like Horizon Zero Dawn or Assassin's Creed, again, there's a lot to recommend here. So definitely worth checking out before we retire our PlayStation 4s. And, it'll be interesting to see how this will scale on the PS5 as well. So before I move on from video games entirely, I do very, very quickly want to talk about the Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay that's finally starting to come out. Originally, I'd sort of planned, given the interest levels that there were for the React video I did to the Assassin's Creed Valhalla trailer, the initial reveal, I was envisaging that I was going to do a react to the gameplay, but I'll be brutally honest. Whilst conceptually I'm still very interested in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the gameplay is almost exactly what you'd expect. They kind of showed us everything we needed to see in the teaser trailers. 99% of what's interesting about Assassin's Creed Valhalla is the different setting, the different historical period, the ability to fight as a Viking rather than fighting as a ancient Greek. But in terms of the actual game engine, in terms of the gameplay, there's nothing especially new or interesting. And the gameplay footage they've shown doesn't seem to have that sort of generational leap. Part of the problem is that they've already accomplished so much in making these new Assassin's Creed classical games, Origins and Odyssey, and so they're still basing it on the same technology. So any improvements in this time frame are going to be incremental rather than big dramatic changes, and we might have to wait another Assassin's Creed game before we see something truly generational. But honestly, aside from better frame rate, better resolution, maybe slightly better texture details or lighting, there wasn't much in the Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay that didn't look dramatically better than what we can already see here in Ghost of Tsushima, or what I'm already experiencing on the Xbox One X with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So it's not that I'm not enthusiastic about the game. I'm still very much looking forward to playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But I think once you've had a look at the gameplay footage, you'll kind of go, yep, that's Assassin's Creed. And there isn't anything that sort of leaps out as next generation yet. So, again, if there's a response, if people see this video and there's comments begging me to do a response there, I'll put the time in. It's not a paying gig. It's something I do for shits and giggles. But, why not? If I've got time, I don't mind. But I just, honestly didn't see any value in making that content at this point. But I'm prepared to be proven wrong if that's what's wanted. I'm happy to talk about it. What I'm probably more leaning towards is I've seen that the world of World War II realistic shooters has had some developments with Postscriptum and Hell Let Loose, so maybe I'll flirt with that. But actually, who am I kidding? Flight Simulator is coming out in a couple of weeks, and that is the game that is going to define the back half of 2020 for a lot of us. That's the game you build a modern PC for. So maybe I'll do some video content around that. I mean, I'm not a flight sim player. I did pick up a cheap flight stick for it to get my feet wet. So yeah, maybe that's what the next bit of content will be, but we shall see. Okay, so the last part of the video, and again, I'll pop a little timestamp in here. If you're not interested in board games, now's your chance to hop off the video. But I just want to talk about a great little game I've played recently, and this is only a short little tip, so I'm just going to do this really dodgily. I'm just going to go boop and zoom in. Okay, so recently I had the pleasure of playing a game from Czech Games Edition called Sanctum from Philip Nadek. And there's the box cover right there. As you can see from the box cover, any resemblance to Diablo is entirely deliberate. This developer is interesting because the most recent, the other game design I played from this guy was Adrenaline, which had all the signs of being inspired by great arena shooters such as Quake 3 and Unreal and all that sort of stuff. But in practice ended up being quite disappointing because it really lacked the freewheeling pace and excitement of that type of shooter. It ended up being really tit for tat and a bit stodgy. Looked the part, had nice simple gameplay, but once you got above 3 players, it was very, very slow and just not interesting. But Sanctum, however, was a pleasant surprise. It was one of those games that I tried out and was happy to seek out a copy straight after trying. Big caveat on that. When this game first came out, it came out at I think 120, maybe even 140 Australian dollars, which is too much. Do not pay more than 100 Australian for this game, even if you really like the look of it. There's not enough there. When you think about what you get for $140, that's going to buy you a Feast Road. That's going to buy you lots of big box games with tons of stuff in it. And it's not to say this isn't a good game. It's actually really good, but there just isn't that sort of content. You'll open the box, you'll see that you paid $140 for it, and you'll be quite disappointed. But, like I said, I paid about $60 for it. 60 is actually a great price. So, the main components you'll see are very, very lovely minis. It's going to be hard to really get a glimpse of them in lighting, but in this grainy webcam lighting. But the character minis are really beautifully made. Okay, this is the very Bloodborne looking guy here. So, and there's a couple more. Anyway, you get the idea. Really nice looking minis, and the rest is all little bits, lots of cards, and modular board. And so the main shtick of the game is that being Diablo inspired, you are a murder hobo. You are raiding through this wasteland, fighting low-level monsters to get loot, and gearing up so that eventually you'll fight the big bad guy at the end of the game. And there's a great mechanism where you advance through these boards, and we're actually comparing it to Tokaido, of all things. If you haven't played Tokaido before, it is the most chill game you'll ever play. It's literally going for a walk down the Tokaido road in Japan, going to onsens and painting scenery and shopping at the inns and all that sort of stuff. And the main mechanic is just players sort of leapfrogging their way down the road, and that's in Sanctum. The difference is, in Sanctum, you're kiting enemies, so you're drawing enemies along as you go, and then you're taking this conga line of enemies with you until you get to a point you go, well, now I'm going to fight them. And then you fight all of them at once, and it's just very quick resolution. You roll a bunch of dice, you allocate powers, and any you kill, any you can't kill, you have to block the damage, and off you go. And you just keep going until you've killed them all and gotten the gear, and you level stuff up, and you get more gear and level stuff up, and occasionally you'll pause to rest to sell stuff and switch out your loadout. And it is literally that sort of Diablo loop. Now, that being said, it doesn't actually play a lot like Diablo. The whole build your conga line of enemies and then kill them and get loot. The getting the loot part is probably the most Diablo bit of it. But the actual speccing out your characters is more of an engine building game, or more of a combo building game, and that's fine. Again, it's one of those weird things. This designer draws his inspiration from video games, but is actually not very accurate in conveying the subject matter that he's going for. There's plenty of games out there where you are a murder hobo, you go kill things, take their stuff, gear up, and continue forth. And what this game does really well, and what makes it interesting, is by not doing that the exact same way as every other game. So it's not like your 5-minute dungeons and all that sort of stuff. The build up your conga line, murder them, level up, go rest, decide what gear you want to take, and then go build up a new conga line. It's actually a really compelling and clever mechanic. And it then becomes a question of you're racing to the end to this final encounter, and the final boss is actually hugely stacked against you. Like, he does massive damage, and it's sort of a winding down. Like, he absolutely beasts you early on, and you sort of have to be able to suffer through that initial shock and have enough left over to chip him down until you eventually kill him. And if you've got multiple players, you're effectively all playing your own game, and you just the way you interact with each other is just tempo and removing opportunities from the board. That being said, even though the interaction's not super direct, it is interesting. I've just realised I've left the video clip running in the background, so there's probably been Ghost of Tsushima murder sounds going the whole time. Maybe I'll re-record. I'm pretty lazy, so maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just leave them in there. It suits the subject matter. So the main gameplay loop in Sanctum works. Not necessarily Diablo in a box, but it honestly doesn't matter. If you can get the game for $60 instead of the $140, it's a really safe buy. It's really enjoyable, and gets a thumbs up. It's one that I added into my collection after playing it. Normally I'm the one who goes out and buys things. This one I held off on, and someone else bought, and I'm like, oh yeah, that actually turned out good. So give it a chance. For some reason, the reviews on BGG are amazing, but again, I think it's a bit of a victim of how it was marketed. They've said this is a Diablo in a box, and it's not. It's not Diablo in a box, but what it is an interesting little dungeon crawl themed game that plays differently to most other dungeon crawl games. Now, the biggest problem that I can foresee in it is the content isn't especially deep. It is going to become an optimization race once you start playing it more and more, and that's another reason why you don't want to spend $140. But for $60, if you get a dozen plays out of it at $60, that's a huge amount of value. You're looking at $5 a session, and the session's 90 minutes to 2 hours. So easy to justify, and when you're done with it, you can sell it on. Or maybe by then, being a Czech Games publication, there probably will be an expansion for it. It seems like it'll be easily expanded. There's replay value in going through the different characters as well. They all play differently. I think if your group really gets into it, you'll be able to play it quite a lot going head to head and exploring the design space on it. But it's a great little game, and it seems to have been overlooked. So I'll show that once more just so people can hunt it down. Sanctum by Filip Neduk, or Neduk, from Czech Games Edition. Beautifully produced, but not $140 produced. Alright, so that wraps this up. So you've got a bit of review content from all the corners of my gaming world. You've got a bit of sim racing, you've got a bit of video gaming, and you've got a bit of board gaming. I know the quality on this webcam isn't great. I was going to use my other webcam on my desktop, but it was a case of not wanting perfect to be the enemy of just get it done for Christ's sake. So be interested to take any feedback, and if this gets any views at all, maybe I'll do it again. If no one watches it, well, no one watches my dirt rally stuff, and I still make that crap, so we'll see what happens. Who knows? So, thank you for watching, and auf Wiedersehen.